Hi, fellas, and good morning again. And it's good to see everybody. And Bob Powell, it's good to kind of see you. So we know you're having video issues.
It's good to be seen.
Yeah, good, good. Well, we know you're working on that, and hope that all turns out. So,
Hardy, congratulations, Jeff.
Oh, thank you.
is that in regard to retirement?
Yes, I'm fully and completely retarded from FedEx.
Wow.
Yes, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Are you going to buy a small plane?
No.
And your first day retired, you got jury duty?
That is
How'd
correct.
that happen?
So it's today's your first day of retirement?
No, it was the 18th, but
Oh,
close
well,
enough.
yeah, Dave, thanks for, I was thinking it was coming around, but I kind of lose track, Jeff, sorry. But Dave, thanks for acknowledging that for all of us. So that's a big deal.
It is.
Yeah. Well, let's get started. The great news is we're actually in a new chapter, chapter 15. We're moving along, and this chapter, well, this section is pretty familiar with all of us. You know, I am the vine, you are the branches. That goes way back into our historical Christian memory, and let's dive into it and look at it. Last time in chapter 14, we talked about Jesus preparing his disciples. That's really the thrust of this entire section. And and really the bottom is going to drop out, and Jesus is preparing his disciples for that occurrence. And really the thrust of what we're talking about is Jesus preparing his disciples to live their lives as me through you, Jesus through the disciples to the world. We then discussed, excuse me, guys. We then discussed what that will look like through the disciples, and then followed by what that looks like through his current disciples, which would include you and I. We wrapped up last week with thoughts about, I thought it would be interesting to include a question. I really honestly can't remember how we addressed it. It seems like Steve addressed it, but forgive me, Steve, I can't remember exactly what he said. I know it's good, but I just can't remember. So when you think about it, how has this changed? The me through you, or me through us to the world, how that has changed in our lifetime. If we take time to ponder that, that is really remarkable how the message, the core message, of course, is the same, but how that is expressed is we're in a high rate of change right now. And I think in a lot of ways, the church is being called to rethink what the church is to be all about. I think some are probably more aware than others, but it's a high rate of questioning and change right now. John 15, would somebody read that, verses 1 through 5? Very familiar. And either read it from the screen or from your Bible, either way.
I am the true vine, and my Father is the farmer. He removes every branch in me if he does not bear fruit, and he prunes every branch that bears fruit so that it would bear more fruit. You are already pruned because of the word which I have spoken to you. You must now dwell in me, and I in you. Just as the branch is not able to bear fruit by itself unless it would remain in the vine, so you could not bear fruit unless you would dwell continuously in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. The one who dwells in me and I in him, this one bears much fruit, because apart from me, you're not able to do anything.
Good. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for reading that. All right, let's move in there. Verse 1 that is Jesus's intent. And I am one that looks at this text as a continuance of chapter 14, and the main subject is bearing fruit. It's all about fruit. And Jesus is this me through you is about his life through those who follow him to the world. And it's about bearing his fruit. This juncture, Jesus provides an analogy, the vine, to illustrate what he's just told his disciples. He does this by extending his thought from what he stated in 14:27 through 31. And there's no reason to read that. Well, here it is right here. I guess I did put it on there. I took the attempt to highlight what is the thrust of the text rather than the entirety of the entirety of the text is there, 27 through 31. But I chose to highlight what I believe is the main thrust. He is providing peace to his followers because they think again, the bottom is about to drop out of everything. Peace I leave you, he says in verse 27, peace I give you. Do not let your hearts be troubled nor fearful. I am going to the Father, for the Father is greater than I. And now I have told you before it happens, so that when it happens, you can believe. I love the Father. I do exactly as the Father commanded me. Get up, let's go from here. So we'll dive down into that. The entire purpose is to remove the fear from the minds of the disciples. That is what the core of this is. Continuing with his intent, his analogy of the vine would have been really familiar to the disciples. And the reason is because vineyards are as common to them as gas stations to us. If you go to let's say the Sonoma Valley or the Napa Valley in California or some other, in Italy, you're in a wine bearing area, you are in a wine bearing area. And thus it was commonplace, as common as the corner gas station. So these disciples have passed, numerous vineyards, and so it's a very familiar connection to them. It's critical to Jesus that the disciples understand the relationship between himself and his Father. Thus, he says, he opens up, not I am the vine and you are the branches. He opens up with, I am the true vine and my Father is the vine dresser, because he's making a connection that he wants them to understand. Thus, he begins with the familiar, the familiar, which would be the vine, and he's moving to the role of the vine dresser, which would be that farmer, as Dave read, the husbandman, and that would be the unfamiliar. He is making a correlation between this common analogy and what is actually true. And he opens up with the common I am the vine. Now there's a note here. This is the last time in John's gospel account where Jesus uses the I am, the ego eimi, with the predicate nominative. Now that's fancy wording for the times in John's gospel where the ego eimi, the I am, is connected with a noun, a nominative. And this is the last time that's used. He's also uses I am, where he says, I am I am that I am. But here, when it's used with the predicate nominative, he's making a point. He's used other times, I am the way, the truth, and the life, chapter 14. I am the resurrection and the life. That was prior, and then I am the good shepherd. There are some other ones. I am the door, the door of the sheep gate. But there are several I ams. This is the last time. I am the vine. When he does that, he's making a point. He says, disciples, I want you to think of me in this regard. And so this is the last one. The vine is an easy connection for the disciples. And of course, they think, okay, he's now talking about himself as the vine. Okay, they get that. Within the second portion of his analogy, he extends the familiar to the unfamiliar, as already stated. This is the connection he wants his disciples to grasp. My Father is the vine dresser. That's the stretch. It was commonly understood that the vine dresser's entire intent, okay, now they're in the physical realm, the farmer, the husbandman, the caretaker, that caretaker's entire intent is toward the well-being of the vine. He knows exactly what the vine needs in order to flourish. That's what it's all about. The disciples would have understood this through their observations of the vine dressers, because they're common. They were used to walking down the road and seeing the vine dresser out in the vineyard working, pruning, removing the dead branches, what is necessary for the health of that vine. Yep, Dave, you had a comment.
Well, I just think it's really interesting, and for me at least, it's helpful in the continuity to also recall that, as far as I know, in Scripture, the first time the I am was used as that name, as that expression, was when Moses was on the mountain and he asked, "Who shall I tell them has sent me?" And God answered him and said, "I am."
Yeah.
So that identification as the root authority or the overall authority or the essence of a being goes back a long, long ways.
It sure does. And that is like the prime. I think what we could do is interpret the remaining I ams from that first occurrence.
Yes.
And it has a lot of bearing. Very good. Thanks, Dave. So the disciples are in the realm of the familiar. They understand the idea of the vine dresser. And this is critical for the disciples to make this connection. The Father is the vine dresser, he's saying. My Father is the vine dresser. Therefore, the Father is entirely, just like in the physical realm of the analogy, the Father is entirely interested and therefore engaged in the moment-by-moment care of what is in his realm, the vines within his vineyard. Now there is that was true. They could make that connection. The vine dresser was very concerned and engaged in what was in his realm. Now, when we move to the Father, that realm changes. It's not a location that is measured out by fences. It's the implication is that the Father is 100% engaged in all things at all times. But the analogy is a much smaller piece of what is actually true. The care of the husbandman can be transposed to the care of the Father for what is in the Father's realm, which includes all things. The Father, like the vine dresser, is for them. That is a critical, really a critical phrase. And this idea is really difficult for the disciples and human beings to embrace. We just naturally don't think of God the Father as for us. God is someone who, God the Father especially, stands aloof and is really, in most cases, in our thoughts, judgmental, that we have to live up to a certain type of behavior in order to please God. And that is something that we create in our heads. Really common among the religious and the non-religious. The point, 5:2, every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch that bears fruit, he prunes it so that it may bear more fruit. Now, this is interesting. Like the vine dresser, the Father knows exactly what to do with the vine in order to provide maximum life for the vine. Remember, it's about the vine. Jesus explains this as two aspects. There is a removal of dead wood, and there is a pruning of that which is alive. That's what the vine dresser does. That's what tree people do. It's a common, very common scenario: removal of the dead and pruning of that which is alive. Now, here's the rub. Because of how we think as people, we automatically turn this text, what Jesus is saying, into a behavior warning. You know, you better watch out, you're going to get removed. I mean, it's how we're transposing that way of thinking onto the text. What Jesus is saying here has nothing to do with human performance, but it has everything to do with the Father's engagement for the 100% well-being of the vine. Because, and it's implied, I understand that, the vine dresser loves the vine. The vine, this is all about the Father's care for the vine. I am the true vine. My Father is the vine dresser. The disciples need hope. Here they are in this dire time of mental gymnastics, trying to figure out, why would the master leave us, and what is our immediate future? He's not out to scare them or threaten them. He's out to comfort them. And so the disciples need hope. Jesus directs their thoughts to his relationship with the Father. That's actually a continuation of 17 through 21. He points to his relationship with the Father, and in there is hope. The point, when it appears that there is no hope, it's not over, because the Father is there for them regardless. That's the point he's trying to make. The Father is there. He is the vine dresser. He will not leave them. He says it earlier, I won't leave you, I won't abandon you. Then he moves in verse 3. You are already clean, he's saying to them, because of the word which I have spoken to you. You are already clean. That is so critical. After he makes his point of Father's engagement regardless, he moves to what this means for his followers. It's as if he's saying, and I paraphrase here, Jesus saying to his disciples, you need not strive, try, hunker down, grapple, or white knuckle through any number of humanly derived efforts to figure it out. Fellas, you don't have to do that. It's like that is what he's saying. You're already clean. It has been done to you. And what is implied is that all that is necessary is simply receive it. When Jesus refers to the disciples' state as clean, he's referring to the analogy, the clean. So the clean ties to what the vine dresser does to the vine. They are clean, just like a vine has been cleared of distraction. All life hindering elements have been removed by the loving vine dresser. It's all done. Therefore, the disciples have been made clean for growth, for life, for living out in the joy that God through Christ is providing. This has occurred because the vine dresser is present in the here and now and is in constant care of the vine. And so he therefore says in the next text about 3 or 4 times, remain. This is the call, remain in me, therefore remain in me, and I in you. Just as the branch cannot bear fruit of itself, there's the purpose, but must remain in the vine, they would make that connection. The vine dresser doesn't cut off the vine and expect it to grow fruit. And that would be a commonplace. They would get that. Neither can you unless you remain in the vine. This is about fruit bearing. Because it has been done, all they need to do is remain. This means remain connected. No need to strive to get connected. This is so critical. I know this theologically, but much of my Christian experience has been, in a sense, if I could just, and that is really wrong thinking. It's about remaining, not to get connected. And I say, I think we all know this theologically, but in the practical sense, we live, our behavior is such that we need to get connected to God so I can hear. We pray, oh Lord, give me discernment, or Lord, let me get close to you. Well, we already are, but that is in a practical sense, something that I'm 69 and still work with that sometimes. Remaining is the action which keeps me within what is actually true. I've said that numerous times. We talk about the Father, the kingdom. It's what actually exists. It's what's true. The remainder is what I create in my head that I think is true. In contrast, our human propensity is to make ourselves favorable to God, what I was just saying. And I see this, the first mention of this is in Genesis 3, and it's how I interpret Genesis 3, is that the man and the woman disobeyed the command. God said, in the day you eat of it, you will die, and they did. And the result of death, they died, but they didn't die, as we know it. That is talking about a separation that took place. And the first response of the humans is to do something for themselves to make them acceptable. Fig leaves. We need to do something in order to make ourselves acceptable. That that idea has carried throughout all of history and really explains what occurs. I don't believe anything changed on God's side. I think everything changed on their side. Thus, death. That's what the condition of death is. I've been dwelling on this idea that I'm looking more and more at the text and the story of the Bible from the 30,000 foot view, as there is a death and there is a life. Those two ideas, and looking at those two ideas as the framework by which to understand the biblical text, death and life. Unlike above, Genesis 3, the vine branch relationship has been done to them. It already exists. It's the only way possible to live out what has already been given to them. They must remain connected. Therefore, the directive remain. It's not about, and so here's a cute way to say this. It's not about you making a better you through what you can create for you or me. It's not about me making a better me through what I can create for me. Rather, it's about me through you. That is the main point. Me through you, as Jesus is, and he chose to do this. This is how he chose to do it. Me through you. And what this means for them, I am the vine and you are the branches. Remember, he started out in verse 1, I am the true vine, my Father is the vine dresser. Now he moves through his teaching and says, I am the vine, you are the branches. The one who remains in me and I in him bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. If we could really get that, it'd have a dramatic effect on virtually everything. The paramount truth is stated in verse 5. And I, not summarize, what do you do when you use an paraphrase? So here's a paraphrase. It's like Jesus is saying, okay, fellas, one more time, referring to verse 1. One more time, fellas. I am the vine. My Father is the vine dresser. You are the branches of the vine. Do you get it? No, he wasn't that derogatory. This is where the fruit happens, fellas. I think if we could dwell on that, the fruit happens on the branches. We get to participate in the fruit. We are the branches. Now, we don't white knuckle, we don't hunker, we don't try to produce the fruit. The fruit is automatic as you and I remain. Altogether, this is a living organism, fellas. It's a living organism, and we are one. All of what I've just stated, we are one. You don't work for me. We are part of the living organism that exists, and we get to do it together. The vine dresser is present and entirely engaged in the here and now for our well-being. This is what is true, therefore remain. That's a continuation. And one more paraphrase to finish up verse 5. You can try to do it on your own. It's your choice. But it's only going to lead to frustration and anger, followed by a self-destructive path. It's your call. But he's saying to his disciples, you don't have to live like that. Without me, apart from me, you can do nothing. Now, let's go to table time. Oh, good. We got 30 minutes. That's cool. So I want to take this idea and talk about it. I would really like to get your thoughts on this idea. I know we all come from a very good theological perspective, very solid. I mean, we've been doing this for the collective number of years here of experience is phenomenal. But like you, like me, I want to guess that we collectively believe one thing, but where does my head go? Where's my practice? And that's what we want to talk about. And so we're gonna back out and introduce this table time with this idea and say that a large portion of humanity believes, and those would be people in the church and outside the church, believe that there's a spiritual reality which exists beyond the material world. I think that's fair, very fair to say that there is a spiritual reality that informs our material world. We've talked about that in recent weeks. Generally speaking, our thoughts and proceeding actions fall into one of two camps. If we believe in the idea of the spiritual influencing the material world, then our thoughts go into one of two camps. And here they are. First of all, and I think this is common practice, this is something common, we need to get it done. We need to get it done. Jesus is my co-pilot, but even though I believe that it is me through you to the world, I find myself still being entrapped with this kind of thinking about, no, it's up to me to get it done. And whatever that is, I need to get it done. Behind this whole idea is the idea of pleasing God, that God sits somewhere on a throne and I'm here as his, I could have a number of different analogies: soldier, ambassador, disciple, but somehow I'm down here left to figure it out and to get it done. And if I get it done, somehow the message gets to God the Father and makes him smile. Now that's a rudimentary, very, very basic analogy, but it's one that I have gone to many times. So I need to then behave my way into freedom. This is where we have discussions as groups of men, and we sit around and go, if we could just do this, if we could just get here, or if he or she would just do this. This is a white knuckling approach to spirituality, to living, and really not what Jesus is talking about here as the model of the vine and the branches. And so we tend, in a practical sense, to move into behavior as the way towards freedom. If I just do what I think I need to do, then I will make God happy and all is hunky-dory. So when I think I need to conduct myself in accordance to what makes God happy. In other words, I'm transposing what I think makes God happy, or that I can even make God happy, and or what others are defining for me. There's the other one. I've got to please and do. I got to be the person that so-and-so thinks I need to be. And living under that pressure gets to be an absolute drag. That's a drag. And it's not what it's to be about. So this is one camp. The idea that God needs to be pleased and it's up to me to get it done. The other, which I'm much more excited about, and I think much more life-giving, is this one. It's already done. It is already done. And so that all I am asked to do, as we have seen in the immediate previous weeks, all I am called to do is love. I love God and I love others. And that is leading to the idea of remain. Last week or week before, I can't remember, it's the idea that Jesus received love from the Father, and it was like an energy cell. I've got a little battery in my illustration. And love is like a positive, life-giving energy that the subject gives to the object. And in the case of Jesus and the Father, Jesus receives the love. Behold, my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. And Jesus feels, he then views himself as one who is loved. I think that is a really important thing to dwell on. That to the degree that us followers today can think of ourselves as one who is loved, that keeps us in a place of remaining. I am here. I am loved regardless. So the way I think on this side is simply to embrace that I am loved regardless, and focus my attention on remaining within what is already true of me. There you have it. So I would really like to hear your thoughts on that. I'd like to hear your thoughts from a theological, from a Bible perspective, and then also from a practical perspective. What do you guys think?
Well, I'll start out, Mike. One
Thanks.
of the thoughts that occurred to me in your teaching this morning, and it was, a few minutes ago, in regard to the Father being the vine dresser, is it always sort of seemed to me to be sort of a fearful passage.
Yes.
I might be cut off, or the pruning process is going to be painful, which I suppose it may be, in the sense of there can be pain in that, but it sort of raised a bit in the culture. Maybe the 1980s is what I'm referring to, with the popular Christian song, "Lord, please don't send me to Africa." Be careful what you pray for. God might zap you and send you to deepest, darkest places on the earth to do evangelism, as opposed to living here where you couldn't go out for a brew on Friday afternoon. And sort of what you're saying sort of turns that on its ear. And there's a bit of life-givingness to that, to say, sort of, he's for me. He's not just out there to see how he can make me miserable so that I'll be happy for all eternity. It's life-giving.
Yeah, thank you. Steve intended to be And it is my 100% intention to do exactly as you said. I think it's us that transpose the scariness of this text. But when we really look at the context and what Jesus is saying, I think it bears that there's something else. So thank you for saying that. Life-giving. I love that. Bob, Bob, and then Vince. Go ahead, Bob.
His microphone's not on.
Yeah, Bob, you're muted. There
Not
you
any
go.
longer, not any longer.
Yeah, what are your thoughts, Bob? Yeah,
Well, this teaching this morning is really spot on. And I'm referencing at our church, we just finished about a 6-week sermon series on the soundtracks that go through our mind, go through our minds. You know, things like and you mentioned it. You played the soundtracks this morning, Mike. If I could just do this, or
yeah.
I'm not worthy,
Yeah.
or how could a loving God do that to me? And just all these negative soundtracks play in our mind. And we fight against that. The morning that the sermon series was launched, each of us was given a card to anonymously write down what is the soundtrack that keeps playing through your mind.
Wow.
And then when we went forward for communion, we just placed them in a basket. And there was a huge number of cards that came in, and the pastor said it's amazing the soundtracks that go through all of our minds. And the sermon series concluded with God's soundtrack, which I believe is on the right side of your image here. It's already done. Just remain. And the soundtrack that they give us is one that says, I'm loved by God, I'm a child of God, and He is pleased with me. And just play that soundtrack every time the negative soundtrack starts to come up into your mind.
Yeah.
And I think this is exactly what you're trying to me. At least it is to me.
Well, thank you. Also, thank you for those affirming words. Thank you very much. Vince, can you stay on target and can you tell everybody how affirming this is? No, you can say whatever you want.
I was gonna change it to Mike is the vine and Vince is a sucker weed on the side. So I'm reading when Steve was talking about, don't send me to Africa, God, please. I'm reading a book now about a guy, Walter Ciszek, I think is how you pronounce his name. He's since passed away, but he was a Jesuit who wanted to go to Poland to run a church. He's a Catholic priest, and his great quest was to go to Poland and serve the people of Poland, and be a priest in the church. And then Stalin and the Russian army walked through Poland and took down a lot of the churches and arrested the priests and sent him to a salt mine in Siberia, where he hard labored for 15 years, I think. He ultimately was rescued and came back to the United States, where he's from. But all during that time, he was, he had the temptation of like, God, what the heck? Is God punishing me, or did I make a mistake on what I thought was my calling? And it was my idea to come to Poland to begin with. Why didn't God warn me? And, all of the many things that one might have a narration in your brain. But in the time of solitude that he was, literally digging salt mines, hard labor.
Wow.
He came to realize that God never left him, and that in his mind, it was allowed to happen so that he can realize the intimate walk that he had with God that was not dependent upon visible affirmations, I'm doing a good job.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, I'm doing well. My church is growing. I'm doing well. People like me, and I'm doing well. Well, the guy isn't digging salt in Siberia.
Right.
What the heck? And he's, you know, for what it's worth, in the Roman Catholic Church at least, he's like stage one of being sainted. He's recognized as somebody that's really shows that God is faithful, God is intimate, God is the dresser of the vine, and he's going to make your life what God wants your life to be, no matter where you find yourself, you know, despite what you're looking at. And as I'm reading this, I'm not finished yet, but as I'm reading this book, it's like, oh my Lord, what kind of a intimate relationship with God he had, that he can be all alone in a salt mine in Siberia, and be thankful.
Yeah.
Blows my mind.
Yeah. That's another really great input from another man's experience out in obscurity, but yet he's out in obscurity digging salt, but yet he's convinced internally somehow in a supernatural way that God is present. That's, you know, why these things happen, Vince. I have no idea. I have no idea. But the testimony stays that it is true. It is true that a person can be in that dire, forgotten place and still believe God's presence in a very real sense. That's
It's like Paul being chained to a wall in a prison, and while I'm here, let me knock out a few epistles. You know, I mean, he
yeah.
makes
Might
makes
as well
the
get something
best of
done.
it.
Yeah, get her done. Jeff, Jeff, you got comments? Go ahead.
Yeah, Mike, I love this illustration. For one, I was looking back at verse, let's see here, verse 3, where he says, "You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you."
Mhm.
So what I'm seeing in this, that God, as the vine dresser, is removing those things in my life that hinder the flow of life that comes through the vine, through Christ. So how the vine dresser does that is through his word. God uses his word, and he's using it today, and he uses it as we spend time in it to speak truth into our lives that help remove the left side of this thing,
Yeah,
that remove my thoughts of I have to earn God's grace, I have to earn his love. That gets removed so that I can remain. But he does that through his word. He cleans up. He
yeah,
cleans up the vine. He cleans up the branches
yeah.
and takes away those things that are hindering the life flow from the vine that I believe comes through his word.
And another, Jeff, you've got again a tremendous ability to summarize things. That's exactly, I think you have stated very clearly what I was trying to get across and what the others are affirming as well.
Mm.
Very true. Now, the kicker, and I think we all understand this, is that the details of that cleaning process we don't get sometimes. It looks harsh, it looks cruel. It really is, it really can be a very, very difficult thing. But nevertheless, that's, we go back to the text. I want to believe that there is a bigger reality that you got to think about all this in. I don't mean to sound trite or harsh, but where our heads go with that, there's a lot of mystery. Thank you, Jeff. Sterling, go ahead.
You did.
You're on mute. You're on mute, Sterling.
Mute, Sterling.
Sorry. Yeah, good
There
morning.
you go.
So first, I'm a little disappointed with you guys because you've not celebrated your milestone of achieving 14 of the 21 chapters of John. And
I
know,
did.
I've just started with you, and so I'm really looking forward to the last third of John with you.
That would be about a decade, Sterling.
Well, I'm realizing that. I'm realizing
Well, we
that.
hope not, but
But yeah, no, so I think I've said this in some of my past comments that to me, this has been a pep talk of sorts to the disciples. And, they've said, okay, let's go. They've now arrived somewhere else. And he's, to me, continuing on with the pep talk. And he knows the challenge that they're going to face once he's gone. And he's saying, remain faithful. And I kind of had this idea, and then I went and I looked ahead at what we're going to, have shortly is subtitled, the chapter subtitled, "The World Hates the Disciples." That's coming up starting in verse 18. And so it is to me the continuation of a pep talk, and the importance of remaining faithful, and because there are going to be challenges as they go forward. Maybe stretching this a little bit, but we've thought about the fruit. I think it can be very, we can make it about ourselves in terms of the fruit, but it's really, maybe the fruit is really us, that as the disciples go forward and spread the gospel, we are the fruit. We are what the disciples will bear us as the fruit. Anyway, those are just my humble thoughts. And but I just also wanted to say, I've shared this with Mike, just how much I'm enjoying this. You're a special group of guys, and I really enjoy spending time with you. So
Hey, Sterling, could we get your email address as kind of a sidebar?
sure. It's short, SHORT, at Sante, S is in Sam, AN, T is in Tom, E, partners.com.
Thank you.
And am I the only working guy anymore? Anybody else still working? I'm trying my best to stop, but I realize now that Jeff's retired, I might be the only guy still working.
I think it's a requirement to join the group.
Yeah, I'm trying.
thank you,
Bob's still
Sterling.
working.
I think Dave had his hand up. Yeah, thanks, Sterling. Dave and then John. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this reminds me, and it's very much in keeping with this early part of chapter 15. And I don't know that this phrase appears in scripture, but it speaks to this, and it speaks to a very real truth. And that is that bad roots cannot bear good fruits. So if we think of the concept of the vine, what this is really teaching us is that the vine itself, the whole root of the thing, must be rooted in the truth, must be rooted in the peace and the power and the presence of the Father. And from that then comes the fruit, along with the pruning that does have to be done. And as we've said, sometimes it hurts, but you got to make sure that your roots are in the right place. And the other thing, and all of you are fully entitled to roll your eyes again, but I'm going to bring up my, whatever you want to call it again. Sinatra had it wrong, because his song reads doobie doobie doo, and it should be do, be, do, be. We are calling here in chapter 15 in these verses, we're called to be who he wants us to be and then do what he's calling us to do, as opposed to the left-hand side of the chart here. Let's get it done.
Yeah.
So we're doing. And the being might be left in the dust because we might not be doing at all what he wants us to be doing.
Yeah, that's great, Dave. Thank you. John, go ahead, John.
Yeah, so that said, Dave, what do you think about this? Conduct myself in accordance to what makes God happy. So does that go in with that? What makes God happy?
That's what we put in. That's what we create in our heads, John.
Well, so we go to this performance thing, but so just keep that thought there. So I think, you know, on my deathbed, or on our deathbed, right? And people say about last words, you know, how important, what are you going to say? What are last words, you know? And Jesus, right? He knows time's up. He's going to die. And so he's been giving last words. In 14, it started with something like this. He says to the disciples, you know, let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, this vine dresser. He says, believe also in me. And he said, I'm going to go prepare a place for you. And if I go, I'm going to come back to you, that where I am, there you may be also. So the point isn't where, you know, this dwelling place or mansions. We get sidetracked with the stupid stuff. He says, where I am, you know, there you will be also. So taking this remain in me, it seems to me that the point of this is this connection. He's saying, if you want not to be troubled, you know, with what's coming, remain in me, like that guy in the salt mine with Vince, right? There's this connection. And I think the connection, I think we're driven like with marriage. Can you imagine saying, conduct myself in accordance to what makes my wife happy? Well, is that important? It absolutely is important, but it's not, what should I say? It's not the end all. So my behavior is important, but the basis for the relationship is what we moved into, and this idea of remaining in me, right? So I would just say it's not about me, it's the connection. And Mike, the only thing I would say, embrace that I am loved regardless, and focus my attention on remaining within what is already true. I would say what is already true of the vine. Forget me, the branch. You know, it's all about the vine. And my job is somehow to stay connected.
Thanks, John. Yeah, thanks for your comments. And you know, we're getting close to the end here. Jeff, you were first, but then Totsi. You two got your hands raised, and I really appreciate it. But we are out of time. Anybody want to? Any closing comment from you guys?
I was just gonna say, I liked what Sterling said about the pep talk, because he was telling them, hey, you're gonna face some trials here. So if you don't remain in me, you're not gonna be strong. And when somebody pulls on you, you might break off. You might be dried up and you might break off. So if you don't remain in me, you're not gonna survive the trials that are coming. That was just a thought.
Well, that's comforting.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff. Totsi, do you have any more positive, something a little bit more positive? Thanks, Jeff.
I just wanted to say that for me, humility is the key. Because if I'm not humble, then I start focusing on myself and what I've done and whatever. So when I initially became a Christian, I just used to focus on what I repeated to myself during my baptism, that I died to my old life and I live my new life in Jesus Christ. And I was in a humble state from being fired in Maine, so I had to remember that at this stage of my life, now that I've been a Christian for a good period of time, that I still need to remain humble, otherwise I get into myself.
Good. That's a good word, Tatsi. Thank you. Well, thank you to you all. Carl, thanks for joining in. We didn't hear from you today, but we see you and we acknowledge you. And everybody have a great week. And
Mike,
I was gonna tell Jeff, I'm gonna embroider what you said into a pot holder for my kitchen so that I could be inspired during the day.
and Mike, I won't be there next week. I will be under the knife. So
oh, yeah.
Oh,
I forget. Is it knee?
hip.
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 Oh,
I've always
yeah.
wanted. I wanted to be
hip
hip
is
my whole
what you
life. Now I'm
wanna
going to
do.
get hip.
I can
What?
tell you by experience, the hip is.
Okay, I know you can. So yeah, I'll
Hip,
see
hip,
you on the other
hooray.
side. Yeah.
Well, we'll be thinking of you, Bill, next week. And
Thank you.
you
he'll
guys
have a little beret on and a saxophone.
Yeah.
good,
Yeah. You sign these long papers for a reason, you know.
good to be with you all. And we will plan to meet next week. So we'll look forward to that, guys. Take care. Good to be with you all. Bye.
Bye.
Bye now.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you
Thanks,
all.
Mike.